Hello there, you're now with me, Lorenzo Isaac, for TVS News at 5. Let's begin with our top stories. Senior lawyer Hisham Teh Potiek told the federal court this afternoon that he will file fresh submissions to defend Datuk Sri Najib Razak in the former Prime Minister's final appeal against his conviction of misappropriating funds from SRC International Sendirian Berhad. Hisham had applied to discharge himself from acting as Najib's counsel this morning if the federal court refused to defer hearing the final appeal, but was thwarted by the panel of 5 judges led by Chief Justice Tun Tengku Maimun Tuan Mat, who reminded the lawyer that he had a duty to his client after accepting the appointment. Following that, he told the court he would be arguing for Najib based on the previous submissions filed at the Court of Appeal by Najib's previous counsel, Tan Sri Muhammad Shafi Abdullah, after the defense cited unpreparedness to present his case since they were appointed at the 11th hour.
Earlier today, Tengku Maimun asked Hisham if the defense would be relying on written submission filed by Najib's former lawyers before the Court of Appeal for the purpose of today's hearing. Hisham responded in the affirmative. After lunch, he put on the record that the defense would be filing a fresh submission, but did not say when the submission would be filed. The court ordered Hisham to stay in the defense team despite the lawyer's request to discharge himself as lead counsel, citing lack of time in preparing for the case. The federal court had fixed August 15 and 26 to hear Najib's appeal in his bid to quash his conviction for abuse of power, money laundering, and criminal breach of trust over SRC funds amounting to 42 million ringgit. Last year, the appeals courts affirmed the High Court's July 2020 decision to convict Najib on 7 charges of power abuse, criminal breach of trust, and money laundering over 42 million ringgit belonging to SRC that entered his bank accounts. It also upheld Najib's 12-year jail sentence and 210 million ringgit fine.
Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney has announced she is considering her own run for the White House in an all-out effort to prevent Donald Trump from winning another term as U.S. President. Cheney decisively lost her Republican primary race on Tuesday night and will lose her seat in the U.S. Congress. The Trump-backed challenger, Harriet Hageman, beat Cheney by almost 40 points as Wyoming voters took revenge for her voting to impeach Trump and for focusing on her role on the January 6th House Select Committee. Cheney was asked on NBC's Today Show on Wednesday morning whether she was thinking of running for president. She did not respond to the question directly, but when pressed a second time, admitted she was.
Never in our nation's 246 years have we seen what we saw on January 6th. Like so many Americans, I assumed that the violence and the chaos of that day would have prompted a united response, a recognition that this was a line that must never be crossed. So I ask you tonight to join me. As we leave here, let us resolve that we will stand together, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, against those who would destroy our republic. They are angry and they are determined, but they have not seen anything like the power of Americans united in defense of our Constitution and committed to the cause of freedom. There is no greater power on this earth, and with God's help, we will prevail. Thank you all. God bless you. God bless Wyoming. God bless the United States of America.
On Tuesday night, she said she would do whatever it takes to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office. After her loss to Hageman by almost 60,000 votes was confirmed, aides revealed the former House Number 3 planned to set up her own political action committee.
Premier Sarawak Datuk Patinggi Tan Sri Abang Johari Tun Openg presented the Loyal Service Award to a total of 160 civil servants in Limbang District. Loyal Service Medal is a prestigious award for civil servants in both state and federal, with shining records of quality, excellence and integrity throughout their services. Among the recipients, the Director of the Department of Irrigation and Drainage, DID, Ahmad Deni Ahmad Fauzi, tops the list with a service of 32 years.
Other recipients from other federal and state government agencies include Limbang District Officer Supri Awang Said for 29 years and Ladin Atok for 26 years of service. Also present at the award presentation today were the State Secretary Datuk Seri Muhammad Abu Bakar Mazuk, Federal Deputy Minister of Rural Development Datuk Hasbi Habibullah, Deputy Minister for Modernization of Agriculture and Regional Development Datuk Dr. Abdul Rahman Ismail, and Batu Danau Assemblyman Paulus Palugumbang.
A portal for complaints on bullying incident in schools was launched on Thursday, August 18, to enable such incidents to be reported directly to the Ministry of Education (MOE). As such, Senior Minister Education Datuk Dr. Razijidin stressed that the MOE will not compromise on the issue of bullying and that school administrators have been instructed not to hide any case of bullying that occurred in their compounds.
Radzi calls on all quarters to fully utilize the portal, adding that the complainants' identities will be kept confidential. As such, he said that all information should be accurate for a proper investigation to be launched. Adding further, Radzi said that the portal, which can be accessed at www.moe.gov.my/aduanbully, provides 3 channels for the members of the public, parents, or guardians to report any bullying incident in school.
Welcome back. Let's resume our discussion on weekly topics on inflation. Malaysia's economic growth is set to be healthy throughout 2022. But will Malaysia be able to maintain its growth projection of 5.3% to 6.3%, especially when there are talks about 8.9% gross domestic products GDP to be achieved by the end of this year? We have Chief Economist from Juwai IQI, Shan Said, to speak on the matter.
I think at the start of the year, we said that Malaysia's GDP will be trading between 4 and 5%. After the recent Q2 numbers, we expect the economy to grow between 6.5 and 7%. It is based on the premise that macroeconomic stability remains pretty strong. When I talk about macroeconomic stability, I talk about political stability, economic stability, and financial stability. FDI numbers are coming up. The aggregate demand, the domestic demand, is pretty solid at the moment. You see the consumption patterns are on the rise ever since the economy has opened. And most importantly, the government has done vaccination of almost 98% of the population, which is pretty significant. And that has given a boost and support to the government to open up the economy much faster than many other governments. Overall, if you see the trade numbers have touched 270 billion. They're up 43%. In first half of the year, the trade numbers are up 28%. So that really drives the GDP outlook. In terms of numbers, yes, we have always followed Bank Negara's numbers, and we think that these numbers are quite accurate. And Bank Negara has always been quite accurate in terms of the projection when it comes to GDP. So overall, I think we have revised our forecast for Malaysia this year, and we expect that Malaysia's GDP will be trading between 6.5 and 7% this year. And we at Joy IQI remain quite buoyant on the economic outlook.
Now, Mr. Shan, should Malaysians be worried about the government's rising debt servicing charges? And if they are, how should the public prepare themselves in the advent of such circumstances?
I think at the start of the year, we said that Malaysia's GDP will be trading between 4 and 5%. After the recent Q2 numbers, we expect the economy to grow between 6.5 and 7%. It is based on the premise that macroeconomic stability remains pretty strong. When I talk about macroeconomic stability, I talk about political stability, economic stability, and financial stability. FDI numbers are coming up. The aggregate demand, the domestic demand, is pretty solid at the moment. You see the consumption patterns are on the rise ever since the economy has opened. And most importantly, the government has done vaccination of almost 98% of the population, which is pretty significant. And that has given a boost and support to the government to open up the economy much faster than many other governments. Overall, if you see the trade numbers have touched 270 billion. They're up 43%. In first half of the year, the trade numbers are up 28%. So that really drives the GDP outlook. In terms of numbers, yes, we have always followed Bank Negara's numbers, and we think that these numbers are quite accurate. And Bank Negara has always been quite accurate in terms of the projection when it comes to GDP. So overall, I think we have revised our forecast for Malaysia this year, and we expect that Malaysia's GDP will be trading between 6.5 and 7% this year. And we at Joy IQI remain quite buoyant on the economic outlook.
Thank you, Mr. Shan Said, for the insightful comments. See the world closer with TVS as we bring you the latest news updates both locally and internationally just by heading on to our official website at TVSTVMY or follow us on our social media platforms. That's all the time we have for TVS News at 5. I'm Lorenzo Isaac. See you tonight.